Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Janet Sandberg. I am a life coach, Reiki master teacher, and intuitive channel, and I help people like you figure out where they are in life, why they're here, what's getting in their way, and how to move forward. And I was just completely distracted by a very large bug that is on my ceiling, but we're going to keep going.
Oh, hold on.
Have no idea what it is, but hopefully it'll just stay put up there and we can keep talking. Anyways, today I am joined by Geena Hymer. Geena, welcome and thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself to kick things off.
Yeah, so I live here in Montana and love it here. I am also a soon to be published author. I am working on my first memoir of my own. And then I am also have a couple of anthology collaborations that I had been asked to join in on that will be coming out this year. My book itself should come out sometime next year. And I am just living my writing dream right now.
Amazing. I love it. What's your book going to be called? Does it have a title yet?
My book is going to be called Body of Armor,
Wow.
and it is going to be discussing my own personal battle and now recovery journey with binge eating disorder.
Okay. And I have a feeling we might be talking more about that as we get into your story.
You are not wrong.
All right. Well, let's go back in time and tell us about what was going on, what led to the eating disorder, what led to you feeling suicidal, what was going on.
That time frame basically goes back to the same point in time for the most part. I started with my issues with leaning into relying on food for comfort when I was 8, 9 years old.
Okay.
It wasn't something that was initially recognized by myself, but my parents had decided to divorce. And so with that comes a lot of emotions and
Mhm.
things that you're trying to figure out. And it just so happened that I discovered that eating certain things in particular, mostly like sweets or something like that, tended to soothe me. And so with that, kind of started that endorphin rush or whatever you might want to call it that came along with, emotions associated with eating.
Mhm.
And then you flash forward a little bit after my parents had divorced and reacclimating to a new way of life and new living situations and things like that. And I ended up starting to be sexually abused at the age of 9.
No.
And that led to more reliance on food,
Mhm.
more secretive eating. There was a lot of verbalized threats being made during that time about not being able to say anything because if you did, this would happen to yourself or others. And
Right.
so it became this pattern of eating more in secret, stashing food in my room for when those moments of high anxiety or even depression that set in for me at that young age of 9 years old
Mhm.
set in that I could turn to for that comfort. Subsequently, my first suicide attempt was also at 9,
Oh my gosh.
with not really knowing how to navigate any of that.
Yeah.
I did not feel it was safe to say anything to anybody
Mhm.
because I was trying to protect more so others than myself because I was already taking on so much on myself.
Yeah.
I tried to run into traffic to get hit by cars.
No.
Yeah.
Which I guess at that age, like that's about all you can do.
Yeah. You don't know what other kind of coping modalities might be available to you. You can't just walk into a therapy office and be like, I need help, nor do you
Mhm.
necessarily know that that's an option.
Right. Yeah.
So, um, and I tried that on two separate instances, both clearly failed, thank goodness. God had much greater plans for me down the road in life, which of course I didn't know then.
No, we can't see the future, unfortunately.
No, we can't. But over the course of the years, my depression got worse. My isolation got worse. Um, my it was just instilled in me during that little period of time of my life that, it's not safe to say anything to anybody about what's going on. You have to keep things to yourself. And so that just kind of became a norm for me for many years to come.
Yeah.
And when I say many years to come, and kind of flashing forward throughout life, I've graduated high school and I'm now entering into a young adulthood, trying to figure out life as it is. I find myself in a situation where my roommates and I decided to have a house party. We'd done many, many of times. And I ended up being sexually assaulted by someone I knew
Oh.
a week before my first birthday.
Oh.
And so and I had really been struggling prior to that with, things coming up from traumatic things coming up from my past
Mhm.
anyways, and trying to find ways to push that down, whether it was with food or I also really heavily started drinking a lot of alcohol at that time in my life as well. Just really trying to numb things in general because I was not at a point where I was ready to face them.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for any and all ways to avoid doing so. I had really developed a strong relationship with self harm at that point in my life as well.
Mm.
So I was doing a lot of superficial cutting on my body as a way to release pent up pain. Um,
Yeah.
and also send messaging to men who I was in relationships with who may have hurt me in some way, shape, or form. And so it was just a really, really painful time in life in general, just trying to, figure things out. And I had put myself into therapy at that point. I almost did
Good.
immediately upon turning 18 because I knew I had a lot of things I needed to work through, but I still wasn't
Yeah.
working through them in therapy. I was avoiding them, but just talking through other things. More like, oh, I'm having this stressor at work, or this person is doing that, just still not
Yeah.
with the real thick of the things.
Mhm.
That didn't come till much later in life. But it felt good just to get an outsider's point of view and be able to go and
Absolutely.
talk through anything, right? To release some sort of stress energy from my body. And so, but yeah, with that sexual assault, then something in me really shifted in that moment or shortly thereafter, where my binge eating disorder really just took control of my life.
Mm.
In the sense that I decided in that moment that I needed to do something so drastic that in an effort to try to keep men from thinking they wanted to harm me in a physical manner. And so I used food. I was very intentional about eating a lot to put on a lot of weight.
Oh,
And part of
yeah.
it was fed by social, what society feeds you as well. That
Mhm.
you have to fit this certain mold, right, in order to be deemed physically attractive. And
Right.
so, I took all of that and ran with it, and I ended up gaining a lot of weight,
Yeah.
and
That's protection.
it was my body of armor. I built
Yeah.
myself a body of armor as a way to try to deter the attract
Mhm.
or the want, and I even spent, most of my 20s, I didn't even date. I didn't want to date, those are
Yeah.
pivotal
Why
years of
would
your
you?
life. Yeah. You know, I just, yeah, I didn't want to be touched. I didn't want to be, it changed so much in me.
Well, and when we were betrayed by somebody that you thought was a friend,
Mhm.
why on earth would you ever wanna date people you didn't know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it really
Yeah.
creates a whole new level of trust issues when people that you know
Mhm.
betray you in such a sensitive and critical way.
Yeah.
To be able to trust someone that you don't know, like you said, with even a conversation, even, holding your hand and getting close to you. It's a challenge for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, so you built up your own armor,
Mhm.
and then what happened?
No, I spent many years building that and maintaining that. It didn't deter, you know, because people love people of all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Once I came to a point where I was like, "Oh, maybe I'm ready to start dating again." Um, I was in my late 20s, maybe right around the 30 mark, but before going into that aspect, I'll kind of circle back to the suicidality part of phase of my life.
Mhm.
In year 19 of recovery from that, my last serious attempt was and or thought of attempt was at age 28.
Okay.
And I found myself sitting in the middle of my living room of my apartment, and I had a plan in place to end my life. And I made a deal, if you will, with God in that moment. And I said, okay, I'm going to reach out to so and so by phone. If they answer, I won't go through with it. But if they don't, I will. And to this very day, I firmly believe he nudged them in that moment and said, whatever it is you're doing, you need to stop and answer the phone.
Mhm.
And they didn't do anything miraculous. They didn't come to my rescue, but they were there as a listening ear in that moment,
Yeah.
which is what I needed to stop me from doing something I couldn't reverse.
Mhm.
And, prior to that particular instance, I had attempted a lot with by means of like pills and overdose and things like that. And all of those were unsuccessful, obviously. I'm here, I'm talking to you. And again, it all just, you don't know what your future holds and you don't realize the bigger picture in the scheme of things. I just know that I am incredibly blessed and thankful that my higher power, be it God, intervened in all those moments
Mhm. Yes. Yeah.
because he,
And it's impossible at that age, when we're in our teens and 20s to have any sort of inkling at what real life is.
yeah,
We think we're doing it already, but it's only with hindsight once we've lived a couple more decades
yeah,
that we can yeah, that we really didn't have any idea, we were just starting out in the world, and you
exactly.
have no idea, you can't even begin to imagine all of the possibilities and opportunities that will come.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, because it's like in regards to, my writing journey and stuff like that, I have wanted to write for as long I've been writing since I was 8, 9 years old. Whether it was poems or journaling or whatever. It's something I've always wanted to do, but I've always been terrified to do. And for me to sit down and decide that not only is my first book going to be a personal story, but one of many, that's all I want to do is write memoirs in regards to adult books because I know that my pain is meant for his purpose and is meant to help other people feel like, hey, I've been there even if it was a fraction of the same type of situation, but I
Mhm.
don't feel alone anymore. I feel heard. I feel seen. You know, that's all that matters
Mm.
to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how old were you then when you finally overcame your eating disorder?
So I just entered at the end of June was 10 years of recovery for me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been an adventure, and what ultimately led to that for me is I had gotten to this point where I was like, I honestly, I mean, I felt miserable for years in my body
Mhm.
because I knew I wasn't taking care of it. And I was like, I just want to feel better. I was on 4 medications for blood pressure and was still having resistant high blood pressure. right?
Gosh.
Yeah, and I'm young, so that shouldn't be a thing.
Right.
And I was on a couple of other medications for some minor things, and I wanted to be off all of that, and I just wanted to live a better, healthier life because I was starting to work on my mental well-being, like, actually
Mhm.
really work on it, not just surface level, like a scratch ticket kinda thing,
Right.
but really, yeah, dig up the dirt. So I had made that decision and I was kind of looking at different ways to go about doing so. And with my eating disorder, I had decided that I needed like a medical intervention that would help me with the food piece so that I wouldn't continue to be able to overeat while also combining that with the mental
Mhm.
therapy side of things. So I went the route of a bariatric surgery because that was
Oh.
medically supervised restriction. Um, while,
Oh.
so that's what seemed the best fit for me. And I had a great surgical team and they made me go through a psychological evaluation beforehand, which they
Mhm.
should because it really is
Yes.
90% mental. If you're
Yeah.
not ready to deal with the reasoning, then don't do it because you will fail through and through.
Mhm.
So, um, and I was exploring that as an option and I ultimately decided on that as an option because um, I ended up having to fly out of state for one of my grandmothers had passed away. And so, but on my route down to fly to her funeral, I ended up being shamed on the airplane, not once, but twice.
No.
And I'd flown as a larger bodied person before,
Mhm.
but I'd never experienced anything quite like that.
Mm.
And I was in middle seat both times. I didn't want middle seat. It just last minute flights, for
Yeah. You get
unplanned
what you get.
situations, and I was humiliated
Mm.
and wanted to just crawl in a hole. And I
Yeah.
didn't fight back in those situations against my humiliation because I didn't want to draw more attention to the matter.
Right.
But one made a bigger scene than the other. They both asked to be reseated. Yeah. Both were older gentlemen.
Okay.
You call them
Now it makes
you
sense.
call them gentlemen? Why I say that every time I discuss this conversation, I don't know. It's just I guess that's my own manners.
Yeah.
Um,
You can still have manners even if they don't.
yeah, and clearly I did because I wanted to throat punch both of them, but I didn't. But I just felt like you should know better, they keep your opinions to yourself. There's other ways to go about it.
Yeah.
One of the gals in one of the situations, she was seated in the window seat and she was so sweet and so gracious. She saw I was on the verge of tears and just she was, I think, beside herself too. She lifted up the armrest between us and she's like, "Here, honey, scoot over here a little bit more." Because
Oh.
he was making a big scene because he was trying to slam the armrest down between him and I, and he couldn't because my hip bone was there.
Mhm.
And, he was just making a big stink and a big scene about it. And that little act of grace on her part meant so much in that
Yeah.
situation, because she was already squeezed into a spot where she had nowhere to go either. So, but those two moments solidified my decision for that surgery and taking that route. And it was hands down the best decision I made for my health because I had a great surgical team and a great support there. And I was in the best mental state of my life at that point, really working through things. And still been really working through things ever since then. And it's not to say that you can't binge after you have a restrictive surgery because you can.
Yeah.
It just,
And
it looks really different. And you can still do a lot of damage to your body in both versions of that, you know?
Yeah.
So, because I have had little post bariatric binges, I've had some what are those called?
Relapses.
Thank you. Post cold brain set in for a second there, but it's nothing like what would have happened pre-surgery,
Right.
where you
Sure.
can inhale, 2 days worth of calories in a sitting, trying
Mhm.
to manage a trauma situation that kicks in the most inopportune of moments, where something triggers you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just yeah, some people drink, some people do drugs, other people binge eat.
Yeah.
It's just different ways of doing the same thing of trying to numb out
Mhm.
what we're feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's probably one of the biggest things I want people to take away from the conversations that I have in relation to the binge eating disorder is that, it's so easy for people to look at you at face value and judge in whatever way that they want. Like, they must be lazy. Oh, this, oh, that.
Mhm.
But binge eating disorder in itself it's a trauma response. I would say
Absolutely.
in
Yes.
every situation, in some way, shape, or form. And it's also a mental illness because
Mhm.
you are trying to figure out a way to cope and deal with so many things. And,
Mhm.
it takes a team of specialized individuals in most cases to really help you get on top of that situation and recover from
Mhm.
that. Food is a drug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. I mean, we feel terrible, so we trying to find something that makes us feel good, and food does that, and it's readily available
And legal.
and legal. Yes.
Yeah,
Well, and even where alcohol is legal in most places, but it's expensive,
it
A
is.
bag of potato chips a pint of ice cream,
It's more
$5
affordable
right there, you
and
know?
accessible. Exactly, and you can buy food at any age of your life, you
Yeah.
know? No, I mean, I will even say, in some of my worst moments, even as a young child, I remember walking into my convenience store that I went all the time, and there were a couple of times I stole a 10-cent piece of candy just because I needed that. And I
Yeah.
felt horrible about it because my parents raised me better, but I needed it,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it sufficed in that moment, you know?
Yeah.
So,
That
the
was
only thing I've ever
the
stole.
comfort that you needed right then.
Yeah. So,
Ye
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you are still here and that you have recovered and you're helping other people do the same thing. Before I let you go, let me just ask what advice you would give to somebody who is struggling either with suicidal thoughts or with an eating disorder.
The first bit of advice I would give to either a situation is hopeless and alone that you feel in those situations, you really never are. It's a matter of finding your person or persons that are the best fit for you to lean into in those situations. And it's important to know that those people might not be who you either want them to be or need them to be, because
Yeah.
I've found that to be very true. It could be the most unexpected of people, and you have to be able to make peace with the fact that it might not be who you want it to be.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
not everybody is going to be equipped to manage that. Most people aren't.
Yeah.
Um, but there is always going to be someone there that is, even if it's a call to, you know, one of the hotlines, even if
Yep.
that's where your starting point is. You might find that there's resources in your area for mentorship. That's a journey that I have started this year. Was I signed up with the Eating Disorder Foundation to be a mentor,
Awesome.
and that was an incredible experience for me.
They also have a helpline, don't they?
They do. I don't recall that information offhand. We all know 988. 988?
Mhm.
Yes.
988, yeah.
Yes. I was like, "Oh boy, is that the right number? I should know this." So, there are always, like I said, there's resources, there's people. Even if you can find just one person that you can go to and say, "This is what I'm dealing with." If you don't feel that you are the right person to help me with this, can you help me find the right person? Because
I love that.
I trust you to help me get the help I need.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because that's not something I did growing up, and I wish in retrospect I had, because I could have started navigating this so much sooner if I had had
Sure.
that bravery to do so. But ever since I have taken it upon myself to do that, it's been life changing for me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I love that it's so simple, like, "Can you help me?" And if you can't, and that's fine, but do you know who else could help me?
Yeah.
Rather than just being sort of feeling like you're back at square one and there's no point in asking anybody and going down that rabbit hole, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, because oftentimes, yeah, I can't, but you know who might be a good person to talk to? This person who, I know or I met or whatever.
Exactly. We are all so many degrees of separation away from someone who knows someone who knows someone.
Yes.
We prove it every day on social media, right?
Yes. Yeah. We all have networks of people that, and there are helpers in all of them, right? Well, thank you so much for being here, Gina, and for telling your story and giving our listeners a little bit of extra hope today. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you.
I'm very glad that we were able to connect and that I was able to share.
Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.